we have a very special guest joining us, Miss Linda McSweeney, a science teacher at Lakeview Elementary, who also happens to be my science teacher, and also the reason why I love science even more. Having over 4 decades of experience in teaching, her ability to inspire students and her commitment towards teaching makes her a person worth to be known and celebrated by the community. Today, we're going to get to know more about her career, her passion for science, and her pieces of advice for growing minds. So let's give a hearty welcome to Miss McSweeney to Youth Unity. Now let's hear directly from her. Hello, Miss McSweeney, how are you?
I'm fine, Sian. Nice to see you.
I'm also very excited to be here with you. Let's start with your childhood and education. Were you born in Worcester, Massachusetts?
Yes, I was born in Worcester.
Yeah, so you're a Worcester native. Where did you take your schooling?
I attended Middlesex Avenue School for elementary school, which is now condo building.
Oh.
I attended Worcester East Middle School for junior high, which was called Grafton Street Junior High when I attended. And then I attended North High on Salisbury Street.
Oh. Well, during those times, what was your favorite subject?
I liked all subjects. I liked school from the time I started. And I used to cry if I had to stay home sick. When I got into high school, I enjoyed languages.
I also hate when there's no school. Seriously, can't we go to school today? I don't care if it's a half day, I want to go to school. Staying home, doing nothing's kind of boring.
I don't think you ever do nothing, Sian, from what I've heard.
Yeah, especially if you have no siblings.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So you learned at the time there were no Chromebooks, no whiteboards. How did you manage to get updated and kind of stay with the news and learn at those times?
We read books, we used textbooks. We carried big, heavy books around and we studied. And there wasn't as much to learn.
What? Oh, because the history is
You're learning 50 years worth of knowledge that I didn't have to learn. And that's just for my college. If you go back, it'd be 70 years worth. That's a lot more learning to do.
I also think that it's kind of better for kids to get more knowledge than just the basics. If they learn what happened 15 years ago, they'll know, I kind of want to improve this. So they can create a better place and a welcoming world to the future generation.
That's the hope.
Since you've been teaching for a long time, have you noticed any differences between the kids?
Fortunately, there are always a few students who come my way who, like you, are intrinsically motivated, curious, and eager to learn, and engaged in their own learning. And those are the students that just inspired me to continue on year after year. I have noticed a difference in students, mainly a lack of reading. And that shows up in a lack of vocabulary and in a lack of knowledge of other people and other cultures. And so I'm grateful that I grew up at a time where reading was more valued. And another thing, more students seem to present with social emotional learning. And the neuroscience says with trauma there can be no learning. So we have to take time from teaching to address those issues. Surely they were there throughout the years, but they seem to be presenting more lately with younger students.
Because kids are starting to get a little bullying. They start teasing each other and calling each other names. and even starting racism in school and make kids not feel like they're welcome.
I don't expect the children that I teach to remember the facts that I teach them for the rest of their lives. But I do hope that when they come into my classroom, they learn respect for each other and a sense of community. That, I think, is the most important thing I can impart to students.
You emphasize respect a lot, and you teach how to talk to each other without kind of like getting the sense of anger when they don't get something.
Thank you. That's something that I work on.
What were your hobbies as a kid?
I enjoyed reading and I enjoyed being outside. When I was a child, my backyard was almost idyllic. There were pheasants and fox and cottontail rabbits and all kinds of songbirds and butterflies and fireflies and tadpoles. My favorite were the salamanders and the worms. And I always had something in a jar that I was carrying around. And I feel guilty of having collected them and put them in jars in those days, but now I'm a conservationist, so I feel like they sacrificed and I benefited from their captivity.
And these critters that you just named are so rare now since of all the developments. So you're quite lucky, and I wish I was you.
Oh, I wish you could be me too. And it was so much fun to be a kid when I was little.
Yeah. So what books did you like reading as a child?
I always liked books about people.
Mm-hmm.
I liked biographies or stories about people who are different from me.
Mm-hmm.
I now enjoy historical fiction. It's my favorite genre.
I like epic fantasy because like you never know what's going to happen next. So during your 10th birthday, you mailed someone or someone. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. When I was in 4th grade, I expressed to my 4th grade teacher, who was the only male teacher in my elementary school, that I wanted to be an astronaut. Because the Mercury 7 astronauts were more popular than Taylor Swift in those days. And I heard from him, unfortunately, that women couldn't become astronauts, that women were not allowed to fly planes. So I was very disappointed. But I decided that I could still learn from the astronauts. So I invited them. I wrote to NASA and invited the Mercury 7 astronauts to my 10th birthday party. They didn't come. They were too busy. But they were kind enough to send autographed pictures and all kinds of materials about Redstone and Mercury rockets that I still have today, and I use them when I'm teaching about space.
Inspired from you, I mailed and emailed NASA on my 10th birthday. The reply is still pending.
Oh, I'm sure they'll get back to it sometime. I hope they will.
Yeah. So which college did you go to, and can you tell us a little bit more about your college years?
I attended Mount Holyoke College, which was the first college for women, opened in 1837 by Mary Lyon. It's a small liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts. Mount Holyoke is run the way the world should be run. Everybody does their job. Everybody gets along. And people really care about learning. There were the most incredible professors there, who are also the greatest teachers. When I was at Mount Holyoke, I was a Latin major, and my dream then was to teach high school French and Latin. But my freshman year, I was very lonesome. And I wondered what was missing. I loved school. I had very good friends. The college was beautiful, but I felt an ache and I couldn't understand where it was coming from. And then I came home and I realized that there were no children at college. There were all the other generations, but no children running around. And my family was always full of children. I had lots of cousins, younger cousins and older cousins. So when I went back to Mount Holyoke, I decided to volunteer in a kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And I realized that perhaps teaching high school wasn't what I really wanted to do after all. Mm-hmm. I loved elementary school, and so my focus switched.
What did you like most about their kids? Their imagination, their curiosity?
I love children because they meet you where you are. Mm-hmm. And when a child or a dog enjoys being around you, I feel like that's a true reflection of who you are, because they seem to have this innate ability to see through all the nonsense, all the titles, all the paraphernalia we carry around as adults, and they meet you for who you are. And I always feel so grateful that my students accept me. Even at 71 years old, I feel welcomed in my own classroom, and that's a really good feeling.
Were there any other incidents that inspired you to even to be more a teacher?
Well, I had some wonderful teachers along the way, but I knew in first grade that I wanted to teach. When I was growing up, my mom and most of my friends' moms stayed at home. They weren't paid for the work they did. It doesn't mean they didn't work. Mm-hmm. They kept house, and they ran school libraries, and they ran brownies, and they did all of that organizing that helped them prepare future generations of women to come into leadership roles. But in my eye, teachers, women teachers, were incredible because they worked and they got paid for it. And so I thought that would be something. I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. I was never very good at caring for people who are sick. So nurse, teacher, secretary, the pickings were pretty small when I was growing up.
When did you start teaching and where?
I started teaching in 1974 for Worcester Public Schools. I taught English as a second language for the Hispanic bilingual program in the city.
That is a very long time ago.
It is. I'm going to attend my 50th college reunion in May. I can't believe it.
Well, were there any challenges during your teaching profession, and how did you overcome them?
When I was working for the bilingual program, it was fairly new in the state of Massachusetts. And our students were bused into neighborhood schools.
Yeah.
And those neighborhood schools weren't used to receiving children who spoke different languages and teachers who taught in different languages. So sometimes there was a feeling of resentment and a sort of a your program and our kids. And that hurt me. So I thought maybe if I were an ambassador, if I tried to get the faculty and the kids to like me, then it would transfer to my colleagues in the bilingual program and my students. And so I would make copies for other teachers on my break. And sometimes I would do their lunch duty or the dismissal duty to try to always be friends with them. And it worked.
I wish there were more people like you out in the community helping all kinds of people. You're quite lucky to have seen the implementation of technology in teaching. Was it easy or difficult for you to implement these new technologies that were created into your teaching?
Oh my goodness, it was difficult. when I was in college, computers were the size of our classroom. It wasn't something that you carried around with you. I was always intrigued by them. I took some courses in coding. I wanted to learn about them, but I never thought that I would teach from one. It wasn't too difficult to transition because I was never a textbook teacher. I never said read the chapter and let's do the questions at the end. Partly because I think that's pretty boring, and partly because textbooks aren't always written on the grade level at which my students could read. So I had to improvise. So I look at technology as just another improvisation that I've had to do and learn. We were sort of forced into it during the pandemic. And that's when I really focused, and I started to implement more and more technology, and I tried to make it as interesting as I could.
Nowadays, like, reading from textbooks while in school is boring. Like, there's kind of like no interaction between the student and teacher. Like, I like when there's projects and discussions. It's more like I feel like it makes kids more welcome to school.
I agree. One of my proudest moments in teaching was years ago when MCAS first came out. I had 2 students in my 5th grade who were non-readers because they had learning troubles. And they both scored proficient on their science MCAS. And that just made me feel so gratified because I knew that I'd been able to convey to them a sense of observation and empowerment in what they knew just by living. Because science really is just living, isn't it?
Science is all around us, and understanding it makes it easier to do kind of tests. Observation always comes in front.
Absolutely.
Were there any funny experiences during your teaching years? Like, can you share one?
Oh my. Well, the most recent one was fairly recent. It's funny now, it wasn't funny when it happened. I was doing a lesson that we're going to do when we go back to school on the movement of molecules.
Okay.
And the lesson plan that I found suggested that you use cold tap water and hot tap water. And I thought, well, if it works with cold and hot, it would work even better if I put some ice cubes and made it really cold, and I boiled the water and made it really hot. The problem was that they suggested you use wide-mouthed plastic cups, and I had some. And as I poured the boiling water into the plastic cup, I taught another valuable lesson, that plastic melts. And all of a sudden, the water was spreading across the table on which I was demonstrating. And I thought, oh no. And I just explained to the children, well, you see, plastic melts. And we're just going to have to try this again with glass jars instead of plastic.
Like, I always collect stuff, like wax when a candle melts. I always collect it with plastic, and then I want to like change the shape. Then I go to like heat it up, and I forget, oh, plastic melts.
It does, doesn't it?
And I only figure out until it's burnt. Oh. Yeah. So recently, University of Massachusetts, Trun Medical School honored you and your students. Can you share that incident a little more?
Well, I have to deflect the honor to the students and to our administrator, Mrs. McMahon. We were lucky enough at the 5th grade to score the highest MCAS scores in science for the district. And we improved our scores. We had 35% proficiency the previous year, and we raised it to 70% last year. Wow. I can't take credit for that. The students came in that day and they worked their hardest and they remembered what they had learned. And Mrs. McMahon is the one who convinced me to departmentalize, which gave me extra time to teach science. Mm-hmm. I used to have to do science one day and social studies the next. Now I can concentrate for 45 straight minutes on science. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to departmentalize. I like the community building that happens in a self-contained classroom. But she convinced me that it would be better for the students. And because of that, we achieved those scores. Because my teaching didn't really change, just the time that I spent and the effort of the students. So it was pretty exciting though. We received 25 white lab coats that make us feel pretty special when we put them on. And we received 25 microscopes from South High as a result of that.
Whenever I wear that lab coat to your class, I always feel like this actually is me. Like,
good, I'm glad it gives you that feeling.
Whenever I take it off, I'm kind of like sad.
Oh.
So since you have been a teacher for a very, very long time, I would like you to share some tips for the upcoming teachers so they can further prepare our future generations.
Well, I would say first and most importantly, love children. Because if you don't really love and value children, then I don't think you should be teaching. Secondly, know your content. You're only going to be comfortable presenting what you know. So make sure you have a thorough knowledge of what you're teaching before you try to teach it. Don't teach from a book.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Like, whenever you're learning something, it's better to have someone next to you that actually knows the subject or has learned it. Whenever I'm learning, I ask Google or my mom because she has learned all of this stuff. She knows how to explain it to me. And since you have been a student and you have taught and inspired many students, can you give some tips for students to have to learn, how to get higher grades?
Read. Read. There's nothing you can do that's better prepares you than reading. And also observe what's going on around you. It always makes me sad when children act astonished when they find out that there's a full moon just once a month. I wonder what they've been looking at for 10 years of their lives. Don't they ever look up at the night sky? I want that sense of wonder for every kid.
And as I said earlier, observing helps you learn, like not just observing, like actually thinking about it. Like I still have this question and I still don't know how to answer it. Like whenever I'm on kind of like a trip, I always look out and I see this cloud or the moon just following me. It sometimes freaks me out, but I sometimes think about it and I really don't get the explanation.
Keep wondering.
Yeah. So I would like to end with this question. Since you have been teaching a lot of science and you know a lot about it, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for WPS to improve their science education?
I think Worcester Public Schools offers a fine education to its students. I have never been refused any materials or supplies that I've requested. Professional development is at my fingertips. You've been aware of the Gizmo program. That's a very expensive program that Worcester Public Schools bought for the students, and I think that's a fabulous learning tool. My niece and nephew, my great-nephew is recent product of Worcester Public Schools, and he's off to a fine start at UMass and veterinary medicine. And it's because of the experiences that he had interning at Worcester Vocational Technical High School. I think that for a motivated student, Worcester Public Schools does a fine job.
I also agree WPS helps motivate students, and it makes tons and big sacrifices to like make this future generation better for free.
Exactly.
And everyone can access it.
Exactly. That's why when I see students who say, oh, we have to go to school, I would like to just say, oh, we get to go to school. Because if they only knew what a privilege it was to have a free education, I think they would appreciate it more.
Thank you for your time and valuable lessons, Ms. McSweeney. I got to know you more than just a teacher that goes to my school. Elementary teachers are the teachers who can mold and can create strong foundations for a kid, and also initiates creativity in kids. That means teachers create an even better community than it is now. I would like to end with saying a quote. A good teacher talks, a better teacher explains, a great teacher inspires. You inspired me. Thank you.
Thank you.